Welcome to a football show, Monday edition. That is Paul Kuharsky. I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. What is going on, PK? How are you, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm well. The weekends are growing longer. So this is kind of the end of mine.
You mean like the sunlight, or just you have no obligations on Mondays?
Yeah. Well, I'm working shorter weeks during this month. So I was at a baseball game already this morning. Have another one this evening. Very, very hot. Well, you want to play at 8 o'clock on a day like today. Trust me.
You had an 8 a.m. travel baseball game on a Monday?
Yeah. They do some Monday, Tuesdays, and they do some Thursday, Fridays. It's not good if you have a two-parent working family or regular jobs, but we did not have that right now. And they pounded out a very nice win this morning. So
way to go. You're correct on the temperatures. My God, it's been hot the last.
Yeah. So our second one is 5 o'clock, which does not sound good. I think it's going to be boiling. So we
better than like 1 or 2. Trevor, good to see you. Good to see you. If you want to get into the comment section, we do have time to discuss anything you guys want to. We're going to talk about the AFC and sort of create a hierarchy, I think, now that we've got free agency out of the way, the draft is out of the way, some of the roster changes, front office changes, coaching changes have all taken place. We're sort of in that down moment where it does feel like, PK, we're transitioning from last year and offseason into the next phase will be this year. And so when that opens at the end of July, I kind of wanted to set the foundation here, set the hierarchy in the AFC for what we think expectations should be for the entire conference, and certainly where the Titans should be located within that. There are plenty of teams, I assume, PK, that you think are trending upward. There's plenty of teams that might be trending downward. But I want to know where everybody kind of sits in your mind. And if you guys want to jump in on that conversation, we'd love to have you. So please, if you are watching on YouTube, thumbs up, turn on notifications, share the product with somebody, and jump into the comment section. Of course, we do appreciate it. Coming up in August 9th on Saturday, tickets are available. I will put the links in the show notes, but we're having a 40th anniversary birthday bash for Sinkers Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year. It's going to be at Basement East. There's going to be all kinds of giveaways and food and beverages and music. It's going to be a ton of fun. So come on out on a Saturday. Tickets are available, and all the money goes to a charity. So it's not Sinkers is not trying to make a bunch of money on this. They just want to celebrate serving the community for 40 years. What would you expect, of course, from a 4-time liquor store of the year, a 4-time defending champion?
Yeah, that's great. And I would stay tuned on Wednesday, Titans fans. I believe on Wednesday the Titans will publicize a link for tickets to their one stadium practice of training camp, which will be 11 a.m. on Saturday, July 26th. And you're not going to have a problem getting those tickets, but you do need to have those tickets for your one big chance if you're not in one of those special groups or win a lottery or whatever you have to do to get to the Metro Center headquarters practices. And I don't think there are going to be a lot of those. And those are a big hassle. So if you want to get to that stadium practice, look for that link on Wednesday.
This is totally random. I was out playing darts with a buddy of mine over the weekend on Friday night, and he's a season ticket holder for the Titans, and he bought tickets for the new stadium. And I was kind of surprised. I did not realize you could get PSLs for as little as $5,000. I did not know that was the lowest total. That just a random observation hearing you talk about tickets for the Titans.
Still, like you say, as little as, and that I don't know, to get a pair $10,000. How many people have?
Oh, they're
$10,000 sitting aside for that. Like.
People are financing their PSLs for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, what's the percentage you're paying on your financed PSLs? I'm curious about that.
I can't imagine the interest rates are good right now. I can't imagine.
I mean, if I'm paying if I'm a big time fan and I was paying 3% on that, I might be all right. If you're going much above that,
yeah,
I'm not liking it.
Either way, I mean, it does speak to sort of the nature of NFL tickets and a new stadium. That I saw $5,000 and I was like, "Whoa, that's a deal!" Not that I would want to spend it, but like I thought, like, good job, dude! Like, way to go! I was like, "That's all you're spending," because I've seen a lot of numbers much higher than that, and I know you have as well. So we shall see. We shall see. And of course, make sure you check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, open Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. They've got the only mechanical bowl at any barbecue joint in Nashville. They have free parking. They have made from scratch desserts and sides. And oh, by the way, award-winning brisket. So make sure you check that out. Trevor says, imagine financing a 3-win season. I don't know if you have to finance at Nissan. I think this is all about,
no, you can get a deal on tickets this year.
Yes, you can.
Really good deal.
I will say, I can't remember who I was talking to. I can't remember who I was talking to, but somebody smarter and cooler and funnier than me, which is not very difficult, said basically there's a Hall of Fame of like capitalist greed, and in the first ballot Hall of Famer is the person who invented PSLs. Like first ballot.
I get that on the one side. On the other side, it's keeping the tax bill down on people who don't go to games. That's true. That's the case for the PSL, and I could buy that. If you're somebody that has zero interest in football and zero interest in a downtown stadium, primarily to house football, that keeps the bill a lot more of the bill off your plate.
That's a good point.
I think it's fair from that perspective.
All right, so we're going to do a bunch of different things today on the show, but the main gist of this was to try to establish some sort of baseline for before camp starts. What does the hierarchy in the AFC look like? And some of this is not rocket science, right? Like some of this is, Kansas City's good at football. Like I get that. Buffalo's good at football. I wanted to do a little bit more nuance with that and a little bit more conversation. Maybe what these teams are doing to stay good that the Titans can learn in theory, because I doubt our championship tier, PK, if we put our championship tier together and you said, hey, who's on that tier? And I said, well, I think these numbers, I bet you it's probably the same teams, right? Like if I said, who's on your championship tier, who can win the AFC and get to the Super Bowl? And if you were going to be, whether you're liberal with that definition or conservative with that definition, who would be on that list?
I think I probably am conservative with it. And I think I'm Bills, Ravens, Chiefs.
That's the exact 3 teams I have on my tier. Those are the only 3 that I've got there on the top tier. Now, they all kind of like the one thing that's interesting about the 3 of them, PK, that makes all 3 of them did very little this offseason. It feels like all 3 of them felt like they stayed the course, felt like they looked at their roster from last year, the main pieces, and they said, I think we can run it back. Obviously, Buffalo poured a ton of money into Josh Allen's contract, but it kind of, Josh Allen also, did some negotiating on that deal to allow some money to kind of stay on the books for Buffalo. They went and, re-signed a bunch of their own picks from the last couple of years. They went and got, they kind of nibbled around the edges. I guess they went and got Bosa, who I think could be a really intriguing piece, a la Von Miller. Didn't spend nearly as much on him this year. Baltimore, Josh Palmer doesn't inspire me too much.
No, but you said around the edges. He's a good around the edge guy. I would have liked him here ahead of Van Jefferson, certainly. Was my guy that I wanted as the second, big free agent wide receiver, and that didn't get, or the second big wide receiver addition. It would have been fine as the wide receiver 3/4 for me, which is kind of where Jefferson slots.
It feels like Kansas City has some offensive line stuff they've got to address with Thuney moving on. Baltimore feels like a ready-made championship product as well. Again, some of those pieces sort of just like, it's not that there's not a lot of Derrick Henrys on the team. There's not a lot of Derrick Henrys in general, but it feels like there's a lot of players in that, like, we've got a few more years. This is our window to go win a Super Bowl. I really like their draft. I think they added really good pieces. I don't know how you make a case that someone is better than those 3 right now.
I think Baltimore lost out of these 3 teams, lost the least and gained the most. They lost Michael Pierce, the defensive tackle who retired. They lost Patrick McCary, the guard who started 17 games, also old. They lost cornerback Brandon Stevens to the Jets, but they bring in, a cornerback duo, the kind of players that Baltimore gets stuff out of in Jair Alexander and Cheeto Awuzie. So, they get 17 games between those guys. That's a starter's amount. In Baltimore, you probably get that, right? Malachi Starks, nice draft pick. Mike Green, the kind of guy who probably would be trouble somewhere else. that they find stuff out of. I think DeAndre Hopkins is done, but what kind of team maximizes him to get something out of him? Probably Baltimore. And then again, when you're comparing him to the Bills, who really concentrated on re-signing their own guys, they got 2 pass rushers who are going to be suspended at the beginning of the season. Didn't add a lot. And Kansas City is turning over left tackle, where they've got Jalen Moore, who was a backup in San Francisco, and Josh Simmons, who's at the back of the first round of the draft. And they've got some cornerback stuff going on and some defensive line stuff going on. It's pretty quiet amongst these 3 teams.
And Simmons, of course, still recovering from the knee injury. So here's the Vegas odds. This is what's interesting is the Vegas odds have Buffalo and Baltimore tied as the odds-on favorite to win the AFC, with Kansas City just kind of a notch below at number 3. And I'm wondering if that's because of the path through the division being more difficult for Kansas City. Is that fair?
Maybe. I think it's largely because bettors have Kansas City fatigue. I think America has Kansas City fatigue. And if I'm rolling through a betting app right now, looking to do a futures bet, how excited am I to bet on Kansas City and more of the same, as opposed to saying, the Bills are going to break through or the Ravens are finally going to break through. 2 teams who are very good and seem very due to break through. I mean, the Bills haven't been to the Super Bowl in this era. The Ravens haven't been to the Super Bowl in this era either. I mean, how long has the Ravens haven't been to the Super Bowl in 10, 12 years?
It's when they beat the Niners, right?
Yeah, it's at least 8.
With
I think
Flacco.
It's more like 10.
No, I think it's like 20. I think it was like 2012. I think it's like 13.
Yeah.
I want to say it's 2012 Super Bowl because Harbaugh was coaching that team. now he's on another team.
Yeah,
in California after like 8 or 9 years at Michigan. Yeah.
So I mean, you could both. People talk about the Bills being due. I mean, these Ravens are really due. Lamar Jackson is really due. So it's too bad one of these games couldn't be a Super Bowl matchup, but Kansas City against one of those 2 teams. But I think betting wise, there's a lot of Kansas City fatigue at work.
So you think
I'm not in love with the Kansas City's competition, and we'll get into that.
The AFC West, you're not as high.
I'm not as enamored as a lot of people.
I will be one of them, so we'll have some disagreement at some point on the show. It is interesting that Cincinnati, as we kind of work our way into the next tier. Now, I would probably go Baltimore 1, Buffalo 2, Kansas City 3, if I had to rank them in some order.
I would flip them. I'd go Buffalo 1, Baltimore 2, Kansas City 3. But we're both the same in terms of putting Kansas City 3.
Which is, I'm sure, wrong. Bet against Patrick Mahomes at your own.
I admit Kansas City fatigue. I don't want to see him there. I would love for the left tackle thing to blow up. I didn't look that closely at the schedules. In that regard, I do hope Denver and the Chargers are tougher on them. Baltimore's always going to have it tough. That division always just winds up tough. Those head-to-head games are always tough, and it's going to get a little harder for Buffalo. I don't know that. I think that New England is overrated, but I don't think that Mike Vrabel's teams are going to get swept a lot.
Yeah. No, I think Buffalo has by far the easiest path. If you are, because I'm not looking at schedule either, I'm just looking at division, because if you can win your division championship, of course, you've got a chance at a home playoff game, and you're very close to the 1 seed at that point. And Buffalo is the heaviest favorite to win their division. They're minus 230 favorite. New England and Miami are plus 550. So the gap in the odds makers bet in the East is significantly larger than anywhere else. The tightest division is actually the AFC South, but we'll get to that. It's because it's not particularly great. But you've got 2 really legitimate teams in the Chargers and the Broncos. A lot of people think the Raiders are going to take a step forward. That's kind of, we'll get into that in a second. Cincinnati is the closest number 2 team in any division, but they have drama on the defense. So I think it's pretty clear on the top 3. I want to know who's on your next tier, because really it does. I have 4 teams, which is the next 4 playoff spots. So I actually have 7 teams on my top 2 tiers, and I'm curious who you've got on your second tier here.
I have 2 teams.
2, okay.
I have 2 teams, and I did not wind up where I thought I would wind up when I sat down to prepare for this exercise. I think people are probably sleeping on Houston. I think it was bold for Houston of all of these teams. Now, if we look at the body of work of the last 2 seasons, all right, Houston dipped last year after a very good 2023. But if you look at body of work, same coaching staff, same quarterback, same backbone, if you will, to go forward. Very good pass rushing edges to build around, a very good quarterback to build around, some receivers to build around. Said our offensive line isn't working and our run game isn't working, and fired an offensive coordinator who was a hot head coaching prospect just a year ago. Now, I don't know if they're doing the right thing, but I admire the fact that they said, in order to get up with those other guys, we got to make a sweeping change here. Traded the left tackle is kind of a pain in the ass. Good player, kind of a pain in the ass. Got some returns.
Cam Robinson is not a good answer for that problem.
I don't think he is either, but sometimes you can take a step back at that position and fill in around it. So look, they take a step back at left tackle, but they get themselves 2 wide receivers who we all liked in the draft, in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, right? And now they're loaded at wide receiver. And CJ Stroud has guys all over the field that he could get rid of the ball quickly to if things aren't going great. And if the offensive line produces at a better level or gets better as the season goes along, he'll have more chances to throw things that are developing down the field. I like that they're aggressively pursuing what they think is their problem. I think their defense is pretty good. They're going to rush the passer, that's for sure. You're not going to have time to sit back there.
I think their defense against the pass in general is going to be really, really dangerous, because not only do you have Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and a bunch of those talented pieces coming off the edge, you have Derek Stinley locked up. You went and got the kid from Minnesota, the safety, CJ Gardner-Johnson, or who did they get him
Philly.
from?
Yeah,
from Philly.
Who's an attitude guy.
They brought in,
and they already have Al-Shire, who's an attitude guy.
And while he is old and will need to be replaced, Danico Autry type players,
attitude guy,
like these guys, they are built. They've
got a personality on defense.
Their defense is in really good shape. I think it will be almost impossible, because I do have one. If you're talking about futures bets and kind of how Kansas City is, it's less of a play on the roster and more of a play on our opinion of the bet, right? Which is how Vegas works. I've got a futures bet on the AFC Championship that I think is it's the one I would put down, just because you have to find value in all of this. I think betting on Houston to win the AFC South, you can still get it at plus 115, which is insane to me, because Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City minus 140, minus 230, minus 115. I think Houston is the easiest pick to win the division.
I do too. And I think they're going to beat up on this division. I mean, even if one of the other 3 teams comes to be a solid second team in the divisions, could take a while to find its footing. I think Houston could win the AFC South by 3-4 games conceivably, which is, an enormous margin. But I wouldn't be surprised. When I went to review this and gave some thought to what they did and realized those 2 receivers are in there. Sheldon Rankins, another guy added to that front. I mean, that is really nice. Now, is another Rams guy coming in as offensive coordinator, Nick Caley. Virtually every guy that's done this from there has panned out. And so I told you, bring one guy who you think is going to be the difference maker. My guy is Cole Popovich, who is the offensive line coach of the Houston Texans. And I think he's just promoted from within. He's the offensive line coach, run game coordinator. But that's the guy I'm looking for as a pivot point. If something goes crazy in the AFC, to me, it could be Houston, and it could be because the offensive line comes together and Cam Robinson's better than we expect. And Laken Tomlinson, who's 33, plays a good guard, and Arion Ursary is better than we expected. And
they've invested. They've got, I think their last 3 second-round picks are all offensive linemen, all interior guys. And I think those guys are scheduled to be good players. Scruggs is one of them. Ursary was this year, and then I can't remember, the other ones are escaping me. But those that they've invested there. The problem is the tackles. I don't believe in Cam Robinson, but I agree. If you look at the weaponry around, like the skill position talent with Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Noel, Higgins, Dalton Schultz, Mixon, Pierce,
now to go with Mixon.
They are loaded at the skill positions. Now, they all might fall apart, break their knees and retire, or but they only need to last the one season to maybe make a run at this thing. So
I think it's interesting what they're doing, especially given the divisional competition.
Yes. Now, I think Buffalo also has an easy path to division title as well, as I just said that a few minutes ago, so I don't want to kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth. But I do think at minus 230 for Buffalo, plus 115 for Houston to win the division, I'm putting money on Houston.
Yeah,
it's not even close. You're getting much better odds on that.
So the other team I put with the Texans is Cincinnati, but I'm down on Cincinnati. I've been high on Cincinnati for the entire Burrow once he broke out, the entire Burrow tenure. I think they're doing Cincinnati mismanagement stuff. I mean, they lost Sam Hubbard. They lost Alex Kappa. They lost Sheldon Rankins. I don't think TJ Slayton's all right. Orrin Burke's all right. The Hendrickson thing's going to be a mess. And their thing with the first-round pick, they just pick these random places to draw lines in the sand. Okay, we're going to change contract language starting now. And the guy and his agent say, no, I mean, we're not going to take that. You haven't done it in the past. Why would we be the guys to just blindly accept you changing stuff? No. And so it's a mess. And then the other day, I don't know when this was, but there's this video of Burrow throwing in a batting cage.
Oh, stop.
Throwing to the target. No, I'm not saying this is a thing. It just got in my head. He could not hit the net
because you're throwing out a mound.
He wasn't on a mound. He was on flat ground.
Was he really?
It's like he had the yips. I don't know when this was. And I love Joe Burrow as much as anybody, but it got in my head like, damn, Burrow on flat ground can't hit like a pitching screen.
One of the most accurate quarterbacks on the planet. Can't throw a baseball.
Driving me insane. I would love to see Cincinnati do it again and break through, but I don't know that they've done enough to fix a defense that was a big problem last year that changed coordinators.
And Hendrickson has already said, I'm willing to sit out. I'm not going to play games if that's what it takes. And so they have invested in their offense ever since Joe Burrow was the number one pick. They have done nothing but invest in the offense, whether it was the offensive line one-off season. This year, they signed Higgins and Chase to long-term deals. They've got weapons all over the place. I love Chase Brown. I think the offense is going to be just fine. They're going to score a boatload of points just like they always do. I don't know how complete of a team they are. And I have them on this tier as well because, honestly, the truth of the matter is I have 4 teams on this tier, so I have 2 more that we're about to talk about.
Was it Houston and Cincinnati were 2 of them?
Houston and Cincinnati are 2 of them. I just don't know if anybody in this tier is good enough to go on the road probably twice and have to beat two of the top 3. I mean, you can absolutely go beat one of them, but I don't know if you can go on the road and beat 2 of them. And we did get, not to go back to our top tier, but we did get a question here. This was earlier. I think it was from let me see if I can scroll back up here. Eddie says it's hard to trust Lamar isn't going to choke. Can't be due when you play your worst ball when it matters the most. Now, I don't.
Year it's just going to play well.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think Buffalo's no different. If you're talking about trusting a quarterback, I don't really think we need to get into the conversation about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I think they've proven that they belong in those situations.
Well, I don't think Allen's played poorly in the playoffs, really. He's just been outplayed.
By the GOAT.
Yeah, Jackson has had some poor playoff games and not shined as brightly in the playoffs as he has in the regular season. I don't know that you'd go to Josh Allen's resume and circle too many poor playoff games. Well,
I want to go. So I think that was true early for Lamar. I don't know if that's true late, but maybe I'm drawing a blank in a recent.
I mean, you go back to the Titans year when the Titans went up there when they're number 1 seed. He was still young. He didn't play well in that game.
I'm pulling up his game log because I agree he was bad. It was bad in the Chargers, his first ever playoff game. He was bad against Tennessee. He did not throw a touchdown in the win against Tennessee or the loss to Buffalo. That was his 3rd playoff season. Okay, so that's 3 bad years. But since then, I mean, they destroyed Houston. They lose on the road to Kansas City in a close game.
What did he do there?
272 touchdown interception, couple of sacks, ran the ball for 50+ yards. I don't think. My point is Jackson stood out as the thing that held them back in 2018.
No, but I think what people are saying is he has not been. I mean, if you're ranking those 3 quarterbacks, he's clearly 3rd out of Mahomes, Allen, and
I agree. Yeah. Agree. Again, now Eddie's remembering he literally fumbled and cost his team points against Buffalo. Now, he was 72% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, interception, ran for 39 yards. I just don't remember 114 quarterback rate. Was he that bad in that game, guys? Am I just missing? Am I just not remembering?
I don't remember him being that bad, but
I know it was a very close game. It was like 27-25. So,
but I don't remember him going and winning games the way I remember Allen and obviously Mahomes.
All right, so
carrying wins.
Bo says the only people claiming Josh Allen is elite are fantasy owners. Wow.
Yeah, and MVP voters.
I mean, he also eliminated the mistakes last year. Like he's a guy who used to have 14 interceptions in a season, and now he eliminated a lot.
I mean, had him a lead within Kansas City with what 13 or 16 seconds left.
I think
was that on him that they had a bad kickoff and bad defense.
Yeah, and I think they also got hosed by the call. I thought he got the first down on the push. I think
that was a pretty elite performance.
I think he's pretty good. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting because I know that's sort of a top level conversation because this is ultimately when we look at this tier. So I'm going to add the Chargers and I'm going to add the Broncos to this tier.
Yeah, I knew you were going.
I think those are the 7.
I
think those are the 7 playoff teams. I think it's Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Chargers, Houston, and Denver. That's 4 division winners and 3 wild cards. That's the people. Those are the teams I would put in there. And of course, all of them have established fairly good quarterbacks. The question is, who do we trust?
I don't trust Bo Nix. I think he'll be figured out in the second season. I expect major regression.
Okay. All right. So here's our point of discussion then, because you asked for pick a guy that sort of you think could be under the radar, and I followed the rules, sort of. I think it is an under the radar sort of collection of pieces that they have put around Bo Nix, in particular some of the rookies, RJ Harvey, the running back. Grave reviews already out of camp about him and his work ethic. There's the Pat Bryant 3rd round pick. They went and drafted out of Illinois, who I saw at the Senior Bowl, who I thought was very impressive. They went and signed Evan Ingram in the offseason he doesn't block.
I like Evan Ingram.
He's not a blocker. But in that offense where Peyton likes to take his tight end and stretch matchups, especially in the middle of the field, Evan Ingram is a speed matchup nightmare for a lot of linebackers and safeties. And when Bo Nix is accuracy, quick passing game, you package that with all the other pieces they already have on that offense. I think this offense could be – I know there's a chance that the sophomore thing happens, but I just think this is a guy who's played a ton of football, and he's in a very lucky situation with Sean Payton, who's a very proven, very good offensive coach. The defense is very, very good. We all know about how good the defense is. I think Denver is the bet at plus 1,600. If you're looking for a long shot to put a few bucks down on to win the AFC, I think that Denver Broncos are a sneaky good pick for this.
Well, they're sure as hell not beating 2 of those teams on the road.
You got to find long shot, good money bets. You know what I mean?
I know. I'm just saying that's where the league is right now. Like we're away from the dynasty because Kansas City can't consistently finish. But I do think we're at a place, I feel comfortable saying it, where there are 3 teams that are good enough that they're just blockades for a Cinderella story. So those bets look good. Go ahead, throw your $25 away or your hundo. I don't know what stratosphere you operate in.
I think 20's a smart bet.
Good.
20's about right. That's a long shot bet. That's a season long. Doesn't pay off until the very end.
I threw 10 on Chelsea the other day and watched them lose 3-1. And I'm not saying Denver couldn't do it. If they did it, it would be largely because of Vance Joseph and the defense. But I just find it highly improbable that we're going to see somebody do that. And we know it's going to have to come with 2 on the road. And those, it doesn't matter to Denver, but those are going to be cold weather games, like super cold weather games, likely.
I'm curious if that matters to the Chargers, the weather thing, just because they're such the opposite, but Harbaugh is building them in the image of a cold weather team. That is how he builds football teams. And he has just built a monstrosity of an offensive and defensive lines.
I like the Chargers more.
I think the Chargers are one step ahead in terms of their trajectory than Denver. I just don't like the pieces. I think Harbaugh is a little too conservative on offense sometimes. And I think Sean Payton has that magic thing on that side of the ball, and I think he's got a trigger man that can do it. So I'm okay with both. If you wanted to make the case for the Chargers, my issue is I can't find another. Like of everybody else in the AFC, it was not close to me. And maybe this is part of the story of this conversation. I think there's such a clear line of delineation between those top 7 and everybody else in the conference that it is like, could you make the case for New England to be better? Miami, Jacksonville,
not that much better.
The Colts, none of them to me, even Pittsburgh, none of them to me are 10, 11 win teams. And I think you're looking at 10, 11 win teams for everybody we've talked about. The Chargers' physicality and running the football, the Broncos with their quick offense, both have very solid defenses. I just don't know who breaks into that group.
I think Pittsburgh is probably the next best team, and maybe with New England next. The thing about Pittsburgh to me is, and I just can't get this out of my head, and it's a good thing they traded their one problematic receiver. But DK Metcalf to me is not a precision receiver. And I mean, you're a Packers fan. You know what Aaron Rodgers wants, and he's going to want a guy in the right spot all the time. And DK Metcalf is not going to be in the right spot all the time, and it's going to cause huge problems.
He might be wide open though down the field.
But he's not. He's not going to throw to him when he's not in the right spot all the time. He's going to throw to Robert Woods, who's going to be in the right spot all the time.
Probably.
Right? He's going to throw to Pat Freiermuth, who's going to be in the right spot all the time. And is DK Metcalf going to accept not being? Scotty Miller might have his career season. But I think the DK Metcalf Rodgers thing is going to be a real drama and a real trauma. And I think Arthur Smith is a good coach, but I think you've got a very combustible situation there.
If Pittsburgh was in the East or even the South, I would think that they could be the team that breaks through and becomes maybe this playoff team. I do think when you have a Hall of Fame coach and a Hall of Fame quarterback, you got a pretty good shot. And I think together they will stabilize each other and make each other better. And we know the sort of the culture on defense for Pittsburgh is in really good shape. I agree that the weapons aren't there. The offensive line has kind of slowly been rebuilt over time. But I believe I think that the question is sort of like, what does Rodgers want to do, and can they maximize what he still has left? And I do think Arthur Smith can do that. So I would put them as the next best team, but I cannot make a case for Pittsburgh to be better than Denver. I cannot make the case for them to be better than the Chargers, better than Cincinnati, or better than Houston. And if you look at the betting odds, again, just take it for what it's worth, but Cincinnati is 4th in the AFC at plus 850. Chargers are plus 1,000 at 5. Houston is plus 1,200. Denver's plus 1,600. That I think is the best bet right there. And then then it's Pittsburgh all the way down to 3,500 plus 3,500 for New England and Miami, then Jacksonville, then Vegas, and you're getting into really long odds at that point. So Pittsburgh's the only one that's even mildly intriguing. If I was
Miami's sinking, but on a good day, Miami can be pretty good. So maybe Miami.
You mean like literally like nice weather in South Beach?
No, I mean, I just think it's a team going the wrong direction, and I think Tua winds up hurt, and I don't like that. But on the right day with Tyreek and Waddle beating people, and Tua getting some protection, they can still burn you pretty good. So maybe that's the other team I would put there with Pittsburgh and maybe New England next.
I would agree with that.
That would be my bunch.
My problem is I think it's extremely combustible.
Yeah, it falls apart. And when it falls apart, it falls apart.
Yeah, you're trying quickly
and ugly.
Jalen Ramsey's, you're trying to trade him right now. He wants to be traded. The Tua injury stuff. The receivers are always hurt. Tyreek Hill, is that saga over? I would argue nothing is over with Tyreek Hill. It just doesn't feel like I think Mike McDaniel's a really smart guy, and I think knows a lot about football. I just, the whole thing feels held together loosely. and if it falls apart,
they kind of missed their chance.
I think
they kind of missed their chance, missed their window.
Famous last words from us, of course.
Yeah, right. So now they'll win the Super Bowl.
But I agree, Pittsburgh and Miami are the next two. I think it's easier,
maybe.
I think it's easier to talk about who's on the bottom tier. Because if we jump down,
everybody else.
Well, so that's the question. Who is a playoff challenger? along with Pittsburgh and New England. And I definitely did not have Vegas in this mix when I started the process, but I'm coming around on Vegas with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll. And we've seen teams in the last few years go from very bottom of the league to making the playoffs. I don't think that's what this team can do, but I think they solved their two biggest problems, which is head coach and quarterback. They have some nice pieces to build around, very high level talent in Crosby and Bowers and et cetera. I'm starting to think that maybe Vegas could win a few games and jump into that like 7 or 8 win range and be a quote unquote challenger for a playoff spot.
Well, I think a year away. And I think, like you're saying, I don't like Denver and the Chargers as much as you do. This is a big year for me because I'm fading on the Chargers and I'm fading on the Bengals, two teams that I perpetually overrate. But for the Raiders to start to do any damage, they have to chip away at those teams, and I think those teams are ahead of them. And so there's going to be a lot of clawing at it for the Raiders. And again, we haven't looked extensively at schedule, so we're just talking division. And all of this talk is making me feel a lot worse about the Titans because really –
you start looking at these other teams, you're like,
only feeling good about, them with regard to their positioning against the Jets, against the Colts, against the Jags,
Browns,
against the Browns.
I think the Browns are the most combustible team in the entire league. And that's because the pieces they brought in the draft, the situation they're currently in. And it's a shame because I think Kevin Stefanski's a really good coach. Like that's what.
Yeah, I do too. But
he's
still,
if he was in Minnesota, you know what I mean, he'd be in great shape. Like I don't.
But still, put Myles Garrett against the Titans' biggest free agent addition, and the Browns win.
I would have. So I think here's the question: who is the most improved team in the AFC? Because I think there's a clear answer.
Most improved team in the AFC. You think there's a clear answer? I'm going to need a minute.
So I'm looking up. I'm looking up actually Myles Garrett's. I wanted to see how he did against Dan Moore.
Oh, he killed him
in 2 games last year.
Yeah, no.
All right, I'll make my case. I think it is New England. I think New England is the most improved team. They are loaded up with veterans on defense, many of whom have former Titan in their title.
Yeah, some overpriced.
I think they no question, but they had tons of money to spend. I think they have a coaching staff that I think is now absolutely ready to go, motivated, fired up.
Who are the former Titans outside of Harold Landry? I mean, you're not scoring any points for Jack Gibbons.
Well, Robert Spillane, former Titan.
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't do anything good here except, have a breakthrough camp.
Hit pretty good season for the Raiders last year.
Yeah.
So I just think
a former Raider.
They invested in very young, high-level draft picks around Drake May and Campbell on offense. They went and got Trayvon Henderson, who I think is really good. They went and got Kyle Williams, who Titans fans are in love with. They went and got really good pieces that are young, talented offensive weapons to pair with Drake May so they can all grow together. And they went and fixed the defense with a coach and veterans. I'm not saying they're going to be playoff good. I don't think they're playoff good. But I think if you're talking about going from top 3, top 4 pick in the draft to number of wins improved, I think by definition, the Patriots could be the most improved team because I think Denver's really good. I think the Chargers are good. Yeah, Houston, Cincinnati, those are already good teams. If you're asking me who could increase their win total the most, it's got to be somebody in that top 3 or 4. And I think New England could be absolutely the team that does it.
I think that's fair, though. I think you could say about their top draft pick, maybe it's a higher version of Peter Skoronski, short arm tackle who's guard.
Sure.
Who needs to be a Hall of Famer to be worth his draft spot.
Probably so.
But he definitely would need to be. Skoronski could be an all-pro guard and be worth that spot. I like Jordan Pace's comment here. Calling Robert Spillane a former Titan is like calling LeGarrette Blount a former Titan.
Just saying.
Yeah.
It's a fact. They hired a bunch of guys that were at one point Tennessee Titans.
Jordan's on fire here. Remember Good to Great from 2020, 2021? What's this year? Ass cheeks to middling?
I mean, if that's what the Patriots are doing, then what are the Titans doing? Because they were worse. They were worse.
No, I mean, I think they've got a lot of good things going on in New England, and certainly Patriots fans have to be excited because last couple of years of Belichick were bad. Last year under Mayo was bad, and they've got a promising quarterback. And that sounds great.
They have a proven playoff division-winning head coach and a young, super talented quarterback. That's more than the Titans have.
Oh, absolutely.
In their rebuild process.
Now, you'd trade places with New England if you were the Titans, for sure.
So, again, I'm not saying playoff team. But if you're saying that like Pittsburgh and Miami are sort of the first out of the playoffs, right? Let's call them 8 and 9. I would have New England at 10. I would have them right there. Vegas agrees with that, by the way. I don't know what to – I think Cleveland and the Jets are at the bottom. I think the Titans are in that tier. The question is the Jags, the Colts, and the Raiders, who belongs on the bottom tier and who belongs on sort of I think everything goes their way and they end up – and I think Jacksonville and Indianapolis are very different strategies, right? I think you got these new pieces running the ship in Jacksonville with more talented pieces on the field. In the Colts side of things, I sort of have more trust in the coach and the front office, relatively speaking, but no elite talent on the field. It's just sort of a bunch of good players. So they're going at it in very different ways, whereas Jacksonville might have far more talent at key spots: receiver, Travis Hunter, Trevor Lawrence, linebacker, pass rusher, Josh Allen. They could be, Tyson Campbell. They are better at almost every position, but there's no cohesion there in Jacksonville. There's no plan. It's not together. Whereas the Colts feel like they're just a collection of things, but they seem to always overachieve. So I don't know if they both belong in the bottom, if they both belong in the middle. I don't know what to make of those two teams.
And if you're king of that bottom tier, let's talk Titans for a second here. So if you could get yourself to a place where you're, better than the Jets, the Browns, the Colts, the Jags, then you could chip away at, well, then maybe Miami has a really crappy season. Or, the Rodgers thing falls apart in Pittsburgh, or, the Raiders just don't get off the ground, and you hopscotch two of those teams. And then you have, that 6 or 7 win season that get you moving.
So this is interesting because there were so many bad records last year, right? In the regular season, New England 4 wins, Cleveland 3, Titans 3, Jags 4, Raiders 4. I mean, it would take you 1 or 2 wins to go from last to, let's say, like 11th, out of 16. It wouldn't take much. I think if everything is perfect, and this is, dream scenario, Callahan is better, Cam Ward is the real deal, the offensive line is fixed, the receiving core is deeper and more dynamic, the defense is what it is, I guess. People stay healthy. Like, let's say best case scenario, like, could they be a team that is the first team out of the playoffs in line with Miami, in line with Pittsburgh? Could they? I mean, I think best case scenario, they're in that level. If I had to guess,
maybe let's. I don't want to do go through the schedule and do wins and losses. Let's do winnable. Like, what do we view right now as winnable? Let me get in here and find.
I think they're all. I mean, almost everything is winnable in the NFL.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like,
that's the difference between college and pro.
I understand that. I don't think they're going to Denver and winning on opening day, right?
I don't either.
So I'm not putting that down as winnable. And I don't feel good about them playing against the Rams. I think the Rams are very. I don't have the. I've heard some people talking about the Rams as like a Super Bowl contender on the NFC side. I don't view them that way, but I think the Rams are a very sound football team that plays very sound football. And I know that's what the Titans are striving to be. And I think maybe the Titans will be a much more sound football team, but I don't think week 2 that they will be a more sound football team than the Rams and ready to compete with the Rams. I'm just like doing free flow here, but I don't picture them beating the Rams. Do you?
I like, this is hard because in the NFL it's designed to not be predictable. I mean, this is why I find the schedule game for the NFL to be so absurd. Like, to your point, like, we're not going to go through and pick wins and losses because, like, literally what will happen is your team will probably end up around the same record as you think, right?
They probably win one of those two.
But they win one or two.
Play this game this
They
way.
win 1 or 2 or 3 games you don't expect, and they lose a bunch of games you're not expecting. That's the beauty of the league. I think 2 wins in their first 6 is sort of where I've got them. I don't know which 2, but I think it's 2, maybe 3 best case scenario. That's best case scenario.
All right, I'm just going to free throw like this. I don't see them winning either of those 2. Colts, I see them winning. Texans, I don't see them winning.
Okay.
So that's 3. Cardinals, I think that they could win. So that would be 2.
They could win the Raiders game.
Raiders, they could win, would be 3. Patriots, there's no way they will win that game.
I know that's how you feel, but I think they can win.
There's no way. They will lose by 20.
Okay.
Colts, I could see them sweeping. I'm going to be optimistic for them.
Sure.
Chargers, I don't think that they will win. Texans, I don't think they will win. Seattle,
any game at home you can win that,
right?
You can win that game. Yeah, it's at home.
I could see them winning that. I think they'd split with the Jags, so I've got them at 6. Browns would be
that's a winnable game.
7. 49ers, no. Chiefs, no.
Saints at home is a winnable game.
Saints at home, 8. So conceivably 8 or 9. But I don't think they're winning 8 or 9.
So the first 3 teams out of the playoffs last year in the AFC, Cincinnati was 9-8. Miami and Indianapolis were both 8-9. If you're saying best case scenario, this team could be what Indianapolis was last year, I think that's fair. That's not my prediction. I'm going to have them at probably 6 or 7 wins this year. But I think that if everything goes perfectly, I think they could get to 9-8 and be the first team out. But I don't think they're capable of breaking into the playoffs because I think, again, that's best case scenario. Everything goes your way. You get the bounces, you get the penalties, special teams are fixed. Your punter and your kicker are perfectly fine. Your rookie quarterback is great. Like all that stuff. I think they are closer to 6 wins. But I think setting the bar on what his expectations is important.
I'm wondering, can they win 6 and be the second place team in the AFC South?
Yes is the answer to your question. Yes. I think statistic probability tells you that either the Colts or the Jags, one of those 2, will find a few wins because the Colts have already done it with worse players. And Jacksonville has really much better players than the Titans. We don't have any idea what they are on the sideline or in the front office.
It's a very mysterious division.
It's very weird. Now, and that's evident by the numbers, by the way. The Titans at plus 750 to win their division, by far the closest to the first place team of anybody else. Like Cleveland's plus 3,100, not to win the AFC, to win the division.
Yeah, the gap between them and Baltimore is enormous.
The Jets are plus 1,600 to win the East, and even the Raiders are plus 1,200. So the Titans have by far the best chance of all the last place teams to win their division. So distinguished honor for the Titans.
I don't think that's happening. No. I'll circle back to one of my I think Houston is probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think D'Amico Ryans is a smart guy. I think he's got a lot of say in that thing. I think Casario's gotten a lot smarter. They gave him time, and he's kind of grown into it. And I think they know what they're doing.
Of all the teams we did not like, let's take Pittsburgh out of it. It sounds like maybe Miami is the one that has the most upside. This is crazy to say because they were so bad last year. But if Trevor Lawrence is healthy, I think Jacksonville has a lot of things that you want if you're trying to pinpoint a team that all of a sudden could come out of nowhere.
You know what Jacksonville's got that really kills Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, they hit it on their big receiver pick, and he bloomed immediately.
And Travis Hunter.
Yeah. But, I mean, Brian Thomas just is automatic. Like, you don't have to worry about wide receiver 1 at all. Now, can Diami Brown be a 2 for you there?
Travis Hunter is wide receiver 2. He's wide receiver 2.
Yeah. I think he's cornerback 1.
No, Tyson Campbell's cornerback 1.
Cornerback 1.
I'm just trying to pin, like, I don't see in any conceivable way, even though the Jets have a lot of nice kind of core pieces they've drafted, they just don't have I don't think Justin Fields is the answer. I don't think they've got Aaron Glenn's going to need to learn. I think he's a nice coach, but they have to learn. I don't think there's any possible way that Cleveland or the Jets are the jump up team, right? That turns into this great story. I think the Raiders could. I don't think the Titans can do it either. I think the Raiders could do it, and I think the Jags could do it. I don't think the Colts can do it. I don't think the Jets or the Titans or the Browns can do it. So if you're trying to pinpoint somebody who goes from really awful to 9 wins and contending for a playoff spot, my instincts are the Raiders and the Jags, if you had to pick one.
Yeah, I think it's more likely the Jags because of competition. They have some talent on the roster. They have some guys who can rush the passer. They have a guy now that's going to help them, like you're saying, both catching the ball and defending people catching the ball. And I've been a longtime supporter of their quarterback. Too long, I feel like. But I got to stick with him for another year with another coach, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, they've failed to give him a guy that could take him somewhere. It's now or never situation for Trevor Lawrence, by all means. But he could still very well be the second best quarterback in this division.
Hard
to say.
Mellow Mike says biggest unknown in the AFC South is the Titans, Ward and Callahan. I think that's fairly true. There's no G. Mellow Mike says New England has the best shot of the major jump. I've already said I think they're the most improved team. And so maybe I answered my own question there.
They're not out jumping Buffalo though. So a big jump would be to me to the last wild card spot, and I don't see it.
But 4 wins to 9 wins is maybe one of the biggest improvements of the entire year potentially.
Yeah, I think 9 would be a little bit extreme.
Which Trevor Lawrence do we see? QC Hawk says, good to see you, QC. Here's the thing. It's not necessarily that it's which Trevor Lawrence we see. I think it's which Jacksonville team around him do we see. If he is fully healthy, I think, again, we have no idea if William Cohen and Gladstone and they can put together a staff and a roster. Like, do I think that he's a better coach than Doug Peterson? No. Could he be a better coach down the road after learning? Maybe. Is he a better coach than Urban Meyer? Yes. Yes, he is. I think Trevor Lawrence has just kind of been unlucky in his time, just like Sam Darnold was as a Jet.
Well, the question about which Trevor Lawrence do we see also isn't like, is it this year's version or that year's version? It's like, is it this segment of that year or this segment of another year? Because he's never had a sustained really good year, and that's what he needs, and that really boils down to injury. And so Can he get rid of the ball, and can he avoid peril? And I've said this before, and I'll say it consistently, quarterback health is a skill to a degree, and he does not have that skill.
That's true. That's very true. All right, so just to wrap this all up, Cleveland and the Jets are plus 7,500 to win the AFC Championship. That is not last in the AFC. Plus 7,500. The Tennessee Titans are dead last at plus 15,000. They, according to Vegas, they are twice as unlikely to win the AFC Championship as the Browns and the Jets. I feel comfortable saying that is not the case. They are not twice as bad as the Jets and the Browns.
But tell us again what they are to win the AFC South.
To win the AFC South, plus 750.
That's pretty.
Plus 750.
That's pretty crazy.
I would say that they have a bet. Here's what the odds are saying. How about this? Cincinnati Bengals are 4th in the AFC. They're plus 850 to win the AFC and go to the Super Bowl. They're saying, Vegas is telling us that the Titans have a better chance of winning the AFC South than anyone other than the top 3 teams at winning the AFC total. That makes sense?
I mean, it does make sense, which is what's so weird about the structure of the AFC right now and the AFC South for sure. And look, it's a sucky division, generally speaking. There have been a couple times where it's been loaded, right? There have been a couple times where it's sent 3 teams to the playoffs. But right now it's in flux, and there are jobs on the line. You know, Callahan's probably one of them. Trevor Lawrence, there's a question in there. I think Trevor Lawrence is one of them. Though, you know, if you say you're done with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, unless he's completely horrible, got to start the cycle of finding somebody better.
That's what Mello
sounds easy.
Well, but here's what I'd say. This is what's fascinating. And this is partly why I was so big on trade back and stockpile picks. And it may turn out that was a terrible idea by me. Especially if your team like Jacksonville, the Colts, the Jets, the Browns, teams that don't have a Drake May already ready to go. this year, if he struggles and either is hurt and can't stay healthy or does not deliver, that means they're bad again, and they're picking in the top 5 or 6.
Except they're not. Cleveland is.
Well, and they're going to be in the line. I'm just saying there are probably 4 to 6 quarterbacks that could be projected as top 10, 12, 15 guys.
But I'm saying Jacksonville traded their pick for your boy Travis Hunter.
Right. That's right. That's right. So
that's where the problem is. Okay, exactly what you're saying would be the logical scenario. You go with Trevor Lawrence this year. Right. And if he's terrible, you're there and you're in position to get one of these quarterbacks that we're all saying could be much better than Cam Ward coming out next year, except you gave him to Cleveland.
Thanks, Jacksonville.
You gave him to Cleveland, who has 4 quarterbacks right now and drafted 2 this year. And they could throw both of those guys away to draft Jacksonville's quarterback. Cleveland's in pretty good shape in the draft next year.
I honestly, and my wife and I were talking about this, like, because I know you probably have talked to your son about how fast he drives and like be careful, out there. Like I got a new truck last June and accidentally got it over 90 like multiple times. Didn't know that I was doing it because it's new.
It drives so smoothly.
It drives so fast. It's got a turbocharged engine, man. It's pretty sweet, dog. And like it just happened. I looked down at my daughter.
Rack on that?
My daughter's like, I got a don't tread on me. The entire back window is just don't tread on me. My daughter is like, Dad, you're going 92. And I was like, holy shit. And I like had to slow down. Point is that doing 140, that's something you're doing on purpose over time. Doing 101 could have been an accident. So for the sake of conversation, I'm just going to say Shedeur Sanders could have been an accident. It happens. You get a ticket. All the footage is that he did exactly
what is he driving? Do we know what he's driving?
It was a big old like a big old Dodge Ram or whatever, or a Ford F-150. It was a big truck. They have huge engines. They go fast. They float down the interstate. I've driven one before. It's easy to look down and be like, oh shit, 86, my bad, or 92 or whatever, and then you got to slow down. So my point is I'm not saying that incident is somehow meaning he's a bad guy or whatever. That's not. I'm not some middle-aged white guy doing that.
No, his father's what tells you that.
No, here's what I would say: Quinshot Judkins and Shedeur Sanders and a few other players on that team all together in one locker room is a volatile recipe. That's what I would say, because I think Quinshot Judkins is going to be a force multiplier when it comes to that kind of behavior. Because I think that guy, whoa.
Stefanski just deserves better.
I agree. I feel so bad for him.
That little window he had just deserved better.
Yeah, he had 1 year and
coach from his basement.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh man. All right. Make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages. Again, they've got a party coming up. I'm gonna post it in the show notes here. I'm gonna make sure everybody's got it. 40th birthday jamboree. It's a jamboree, PK. At the Basement East, Saturday, August 9th at 5:30. You can get tickets already. There's going to be 3 or 4 bands. Music starts at 6 p.m. Going to have a lot of free stuff. Tickets are only $10, and all the proceeds benefit the Martha K. O'Brien Center in East Nashville. They can be purchased through the Basement East website, so make sure you go to the Basement East. I'll click, and I'll drop the link into the show notes on the podcast app and on YouTube. And here's the cool thing. Your ticket is an entry for a raffle where the winner gets to go on a barrel trip pick to Kentucky to pick a barrel pick, like to make the selection. And I've done that before. I got to take 2 of our listeners on a football show a couple years ago, and it is one of the coolest radio/sports giveaways that I've ever seen or been a part of. You get on a bus at like 7:30 in the morning. They drive you through Elizabethton. You have lunch. We go to a Rick House. We go to Wild Turkey. We get to do the whole deal. You try 6 different things. You get to see the process, and then you get one of the barrels when they come in a couple months later. Very cool giveaway, and Sinkers Beverages is doing that for its people. So make sure you come check out the 40th anniversary party coming up in August. That's not too far away. Training camp is not that far away, which is crazy. Otherwise, anything else you got coming up at PK.com?
Mailbag coming up very soon. If you've got a last minute question, tweet me at Paul Kuharsky NFL.
PaulKuharsky.com is the website. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out lowerbroadhockey.com this week as we're covering the NHL draft coming up on Friday. The Predators have 3 first-round picks. Adam Vingan, Michael Gallagher, Emma Lingen, myself, Nick Keyser. They're all doing a great job covering this stuff for you. We got all kinds of great content leading up to the draft on Friday night, so make sure you check that out. And then also swing by Shotgun Willie's Barbecue sometime this week, but not until Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. All right, what is your one team that's not in the top 3 that wins the AFC and is playing in the Super Bowl if you had to pick one And why is it the Houston Texans?
Yeah, because they're taking the biggest shot. That's why. Look, those three teams are really difficult to get by, right? Nobody thinks it's going to be anybody but the Bills, the Ravens, or the Chiefs. So outside of those three, who's said we need to do something different in order to get there? Well, Houston. 2 years ago, Houston had a nice run. And then last year, the wheels came off and they fell back to earth. And they said, you know what? We need to do something pretty drastic to give ourselves a chance. And they tore up their offense for their quarterback, C.J. Stroud. Maybe it works. Maybe it's a disaster. But at least they've done something extreme. Nobody else has done anything extreme. Everybody else is staying the course. Staying the course isn't getting you past those three teams.
I think last year, trading Russell Wilson and trading for Sean Payton and drafting Bo Nix was extreme.
I'll give you that.
And I think they're very, very good. So my pick's the Broncos, your pick's the Texans. And again, neither of us are picking those two ahead of the top three. That was my caveat on the question. So
yeah, we're saying if there's a surprise, those are our surprises.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks, PK. Always a pleasure. Maybe we'll do the NFC sometime. Also appreciate all you guys in the comment section. Rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast app of choice. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. And, of course, go buy some tickets to the Sinkers Beverages Party and paulkuharsky.com for good local journalism. Go support good local reporters. Paul, have a great week, my guy.
You too.
Thanks for hanging out. His name is Paul. My name is Braden. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday.
Cheers.